Lena Ward stood inside the old wooden courtroom, her hands tight around the edge of her shawl. The air felt heavy, as if the whole town was holding its breath. Dust floated in the sunbeams coming through the tall windows. The sound of boots scraping the floor kept echoing again and again. Everyone had gathered because the trouble between Lena's family ranch and the powerful cattle baron, Randall Briggs, had gone too far. What started as a simple land dispute had turned into shouting, fights, and broken fences. The last problem happened only 2 days earlier, when the baron's son tried to take cattle from Lena's land, and a heated argument turned into a scuffle. The baron's son ended up with a bruised shoulder. Lena was blamed for bringing chaos to the town. Judge Malcolm Hardy had grown tired. He was known as a fair man, but he hated when people wasted his time with endless fights. Lena could see the deep lines on his face as he rubbed his forehead and looked over the courtroom. She could sense that he was about to make a decision no one expected. The baron sat tall and proud in his polished boots, while his son held his arm and stared at Lena with anger. Townspeople whispered among themselves. Some thought Lena was stubborn like her father. Others admired her courage for standing alone after her father's death. Lena felt her heart beating fast, but she kept a calm face. She had been alone on the ranch for almost a year, trying to keep her father's land from falling apart. She repaired fences, handled cattle, and worked until her hands were rough, but she never caused trouble on purpose. All she wanted was peace. Yet no matter how hard she tried, the baron pushed harder. He wanted the land for himself, and he didn't hide it. The judge finally stood up, his voice breaking through all the whispers. "I have listened to both sides," he said firmly, "and I see that this fight will not stop unless something changes. This land dispute has disrupted the peace of this town for too long." The courtroom became completely silent. Not even a chair creaked. The judge continued. "The matter is not just about land. It is also about safety. Miss Ward, you are alone on your ranch. Trouble keeps finding you. Someone must take responsibility for the ranch and help keep things calm. I cannot allow more chaos." People leaned forward. Some were confused. Others were curious. Then the judge said something that made the entire room gasp. "Therefore, Miss Ward must choose a partner, someone who will stand as a legal protector of the ranch. Her choice will settle the matter. Once chosen, the land will be under shared responsibility, and this will put an end to the fighting." Lena's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't expecting anything like this. She wasn't thinking about marriage or partnership. She was thinking about keeping her land safe. The baron smirked, as if he thought the judge had already handed him victory. The judge then added, "She will choose from 3 men who have stepped forward, all of whom are willing to take responsibility for the land and help maintain peace." 3 men stood in the corner of the room. One was a polite young rancher named Matthew Crane. He was known for his calm nature and good manners. Most people expected Lena to choose him. The second was an older farmer, steady and dependable, though he had his own land far away. The third man stood slightly apart from the others, silent and unreadable. His name was Cole Merrow. Cole was different. He wasn't from a respected ranching family or a well-known town household. He had a shadowed past. Some called him an outlaw. Others said he had once been a good man who got caught in a bad situation. He had recently turned himself in to clear old charges, claiming he was ready to start a new life. The sheriff believed him enough to let him walk free under watch, but the townspeople still whispered about him. They said he rode faster than storms. They said he lived wild and moved like someone who had nothing to lose. In the courtroom, he stood quietly, with his hands behind his back, eyes steady and calm, as if he was prepared for anything. The judge looked at Lena. "Miss Ward, the choice is yours. Choose the man who will help protect your land and bring peace." Lena felt the weight of the moment pressing on her shoulders. She didn't want to make a mistake. She didn't want to choose out of fear or pressure. The polite rancher Matthew gave a small nod, encouraging her. The older farmer looked tired but kind. Cole, however, simply met her eyes without expectation, without pressure, without fear. There was something in his gaze's steadiness that made her feel strangely safe. Her father had always told her to look past surface judgments. "A man's truth shows in his eyes," he used to say. Lena remembered those words now. She remembered how the Baron's eyes always seemed calculating, always planning something. Cole's eyes were different. There was no trick, no greed, no desire to take the ranch from her in that silent moment. Lena made a choice that shocked the entire courtroom. She lifted her hand and pointed toward Cole Marrow. The judge blinked. Surprised. The townspeople whispered loudly. Matthew looked stunned. The Baron nearly jumped out of his seat. But Cole did not move. His eyes stayed on Lena, steady and respectful. Cole Marrow, the judge repeated as if he needed to confirm it. Yes, Lena said softly, but clearly. I choose him. The judge nodded slowly. Then it is decided. The sheriff glanced at Cole, unsure what to think. Cole simply gave a single respectful nod. The judge declared that the agreement was binding and must be honored. The Baron slammed his hand on the arm of his chair, furious, but he couldn't argue. The decision had been made under law. As the judge finished speaking, Lena felt her knees weaken. She had just chosen a stranger, a man the town feared, a man with a past no one fully understood. But she didn't feel regret. Instead, she felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. She looked at Cole again. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry. He simply nodded politely at her, as if promising silently that he would not fail her. The townspeople began leaving the courtroom, still buzzing with shock. Some shook their heads. Others whispered about Lena being brave or foolish. The Baron shot her a dark look as he walked past, clearly displeased with the outcome. Lena stood still, waiting for the room to empty. She needed a moment to breathe. Cole walked toward her slowly. His footsteps were quiet. He didn't rush, didn't tower over her, didn't speak too quickly. He stopped a little distance away and said in a calm, low voice, "You didn't have to choose me." Lena looked at him and answered honestly, "I know, but I chose the one who didn't look at me like I was a burden." He studied her face for a moment. Then he nodded once more, as if accepting a responsibility he hadn't expected. "I won't bring trouble to your land," he said quietly. "Whatever my past was, I don't want it following you." Lena appreciated those words more than she could explain. Outside the courthouse, the evening sun painted the street gold. Horses stood tied along the posts, and townspeople scattered to their homes. Still whispering about the strange match decided by the judge, Lena walked out with Cole beside her, unsure of what the future held. She didn't know if she had made a wise choice or a risky one. She only knew she trusted something in him, something calm and steady. Cole helped her up onto her horse, gentle and respectful. He didn't touch her more than necessary. He mounted his own horse, a dark, strong animal that seemed to match him perfectly. As they prepared to ride to her ranch now, their ranch, Lena took a deep breath. She felt nervous, but she also felt something she hadn't felt in months. She felt hope. The road ahead was long, dusty, and full of unknowns. But Lena had made her choice, and Cole, the quiet outlaw with steady eyes, rode beside her with silent promise. Their story had just begun. Lena rode home with Cole beside her, the late evening wind brushing against their faces. The sky was turning orange, fading slowly into a deep blue, and the long road leading to the ranch stretched in front of them like a quiet promise. Lena tried not to look nervous, but her thoughts kept racing. She barely knew the man riding next to her. She didn't know what kind of life he had lived, or what trouble he might have seen. All she knew was that she had trusted something in his eyes, and now that trust was leading them into a strange, shared future. Cole stayed silent for most of the ride. His posture on the horse was relaxed, almost effortless, as if he had spent his entire life moving across the land. But Lena could sense a careful distance in the way he carried himself, like a man who didn't want to step into someone's space unless invited. She found herself stealing small glances at him, the calm way he held the reins, the quiet strength in the way he sat, the steady focus in his eyes whenever he looked ahead. He didn't look like a man who wished to cause trouble. He looked like someone who was trying very hard not to. When they reached the ranch gate, Cole climbed down first and opened it without being asked. He held it until Lena passed through, then closed it gently behind her. She noticed the care in his movements, slow, controlled, respectful. It made something inside her relax. She had been tense all day, but now, for the first time since the judge's decision, she felt a little lighter. Lena dismounted near the barn, brushing dust off her skirt. Cole stayed back a bit, as if waiting for instructions. She turned toward the small house where she had lived with her father. It wasn't big, but it was warm and full of memories. Her father had built it with his own hands, and every piece of wood held a piece of their life together. "You can take the spare room," Lena said softly. "It's small, but it's clean." Cole nodded. "That's more than enough." His voice was low and serious, but never harsh. Lena led him inside. The house smelled faintly of dried herbs and old wood. Cole looked around, not judging anything, just observing. He placed a small bag near the door and stood quietly, unsure of what she expected next. Lena realized she needed to speak before the silence became heavy. "I know this situation is strange," she said. "I didn't choose you because I wanted anything from you. I chose you because you didn't look at my land the way others did." Cole lowered his eyes for a moment. "Most people see land as something to take," he replied. "I see it as something you earn." Lena was surprised by his answer. It wasn't the response of a careless man. It was the response of someone who understood loss and responsibility. They shared a quiet meal that evening. Lena warmed leftover stew while Cole fixed the loose leg on one of the chairs without being asked. He didn't talk about himself much, and Lena was too polite to push for answers. After dinner, Cole excused himself and went outside. Lena watched him through the window as he walked around the ranch, checking fences, examining the barn door, and studying the land. He moved like someone trying to understand every inch of the place. He returned later and simply said, "Your fence on the north side needs repair." "I can fix it tomorrow," Lena nodded. "Thank you," he gave a short, respectful nod before heading to the spare room. Lena sat alone by the window afterward, wondering again if she had made the right choice. But when she thought about the Baron's angry glare and his son's bitter words, she felt relief that she hadn't chosen someone weak or easily influenced. Cole might have a complicated past, but he wasn't afraid to stand quietly and firmly. The next morning, Lena woke to the sound of hammering. She stepped out of the house and stopped in surprise. Cole was already outside, repairing the north fence exactly like he had said. The sun had barely risen, and he was working with quiet focus, lifting broken wood and replacing loose nails. His movements were steady, strong, and careful, like a man who knew how to build and fix things, even if he rarely spoke about it. Lena walked up to him. "You're up early." He wiped sweat from his forehead and shrugged. "Work gets easier when you start before the heat." She didn't know why, but she felt a small smile tug at her lips. Cole noticed, but pretended he didn't. They worked together through the morning, Lena guiding the cattle, Cole repairing the fence, both moving through their tasks without argument or interruption. For the first time in months, things felt steady. But the peace didn't last long. Around noon, the sound of distant hooves echoed from the direction of the river. Lena stiffened. Cole paused his work and listened. The wind carried the faint sound of riders, several of them. It wasn't normal for anyone to ride near their land in groups like that. Cole narrowed his eyes and stepped closer to Lena. "Stay near the barn," he said quietly. Lena didn't argue. She could hear the concern in his voice, even if he didn't show fear. Cole walked toward the edge of the property until the riders came into view. They weren't from the town. They were hired riders, men who worked under the Baron. Lena recognized one of the horses instantly, belonged to a man known for stirring trouble when paid enough to do so. The riders slowed when they saw Cole. They didn't say anything at first. They just stared at him, eyes sharp, mouths twisted in half smirks. Cole stood calmly, not stepping forward or backward. After a moment, one of the men spoke. "Didn't know Miss Ward hired herself an outlaw," he said with a mocking tone. Cole didn't respond. Lena, watching from the barn, felt her heart pound. Another rider added, "The Baron ain't happy about yesterday. He says the land dispute ain't settled in his eyes." Cole kept his voice calm. "You should take it up with the judge, not with a woman trying to run her ranch." The men laughed, but it wasn't friendly laughter. It was the kind that warned of trouble. "Judge, don't scare us," one said. "But maybe we ought to remind Miss Ward that her ranch ain't safe with the wrong man watching over it." Cole's jaw tightened. Lena felt fear crawl up her spine. But Cole didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "There's nothing for you here. Leave." The riders exchanged glances. They clearly wanted to pick a fight, but they also knew Cole wasn't easy to scare. After a moment of tense silence, they turned their horses and rode off. But not before one of them glared directly at Lena and said, "We'll be back," when they disappeared over the hill. Lena rushed toward Cole. "What did they want?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Trouble," Cole said simply. "But they won't start it while I'm watching." Lena swallowed hard. The Baron was angry, and angry men made dangerous decisions. She looked at Cole, trying to read his expression. He was calm, but there was a seriousness in his eyes she hadn't noticed before. For the rest of the day, Cole stayed close to the house. He finished repairing the fence, but didn't wander far. Lena sensed that he was alert to every sound, every movement, every shift of wind. It was like having a quiet, protective shadow walking the land. That night, when they were inside, Lena cooked a simple supper. Cole ate in silence, thoughtful. After a while, she finally asked what had been on her mind all evening. "Cole, why did you turn yourself in? Why now?" He didn't look shocked by the question. Instead, he rested his hands on the table and spoke slowly. "I got tired of running. I got tired of living with old mistakes. I wanted a place that wasn't built on fear. And now you're here," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied, "but I didn't expect this." Lena looked down at her hands. "Neither did I." They shared a quiet moment, sitting across from each other, the warm glow of the lantern lighting the room. Outside, the wind moved softly across the ranch, carrying with it the sounds of distant night animals. It felt peaceful, even after the tense encounter earlier. Cole eventually stood and said, "I'll keep watch outside for a bit, just to make sure they don't come back tonight." Lena wanted to tell him to rest, but she saw the determination in his face. He wasn't doing it out of pride, he was doing it because he believed it was necessary. As he stepped outside, Lena watched him through the window again. He stood at the edge of the porch, scanning the land with calm eyes. The moonlight fell across his shoulders, outlining him like a silent guardian. Lena touched the window frame lightly. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know how much danger the Baron planned to create. But she knew one thing for certain. Cole had chosen to protect the land in her. Slowly, she began to feel that her choice in the courtroom was not a mistake at all. It was the first step toward something neither of them fully understood yet, but both were quietly beginning to trust. If you want, I can now write part 3 in the same style. 1,500 words, simple English, no headings. Unin like normal, but she couldn't ignore the lingering worry caused by the Baron's hired riders. Every time the wind carried the faint sound of hooves, she paused, wondering if it was them coming again. Cole stayed alert too, though he didn't speak much about it. He worked from sunrise to sunset tree-paring tools, fixing broken boards, checking every inch of the land. He didn't complain, didn't show fear, didn't try to impress anyone. He just worked with quiet purpose. It's like someone who understood the land's language. Lena began to notice small details about him. He always checked the animals first, even before eating breakfast. He kept his boots by the door so he could run outside quickly if something happened. He never wasted anything, water, tools, or time. And whenever Lena seemed stressed, he didn't say comforting words, but he positioned himself nearby, close enough to make her feel safe without crowding her. One evening, as the sun dipped low and turned the sky gold, Lena led the cattle toward the barn. It had been a long day, and she was ready to rest. Cole had been repairing the south fence, and she expected him to meet her by the barn. Instead, she found him standing still, examining the ground near the water trough. His expression was serious. "What is it?" she asked, stopping beside him. Cole pointed at the dirt. "Boot prints," Lena frowned. "Yours." He shook his head. "Not mine. Not yours. And not from any of our animals." A heaviness filled her chest. Someone had been near the house. Too close. Cole followed the prints quietly, studying the ground with sharp eyes. Lena followed behind, trying not to panic. The tracks led toward the edge of her property, then disappeared near some rocks. Cole scanned the land. "They're scouting," he said calmly. "Trying to see where you keep your animals, and how easy it is to steal them." Alina swallowed hard. "The Baron?" Cole didn't answer directly. "Someone working for him." Lena's mind raced. She remembered the hired riders who had threatened them days earlier. She remembered the look in their eyes, cold, mocking, confident. She suddenly realized that the Baron wasn't finished. He might be planning something bigger. Cole turned to her. "I'm going to watch the herd tonight. You stay inside." Lena shook her head. "I don't want you to stay up all night alone." He looked at her with steady eyes. "I can handle it, and you need your rest." She wanted to argue, but he spoke so calmly that she couldn't find the right words. She nodded slowly, unsure and uneasy. She went inside the house and stood by the window for a long time. Cole moved through the yard with the quiet confidence of someone who'd done this many times before. Eventually, she went to bed, though sleep didn't come easily. Sometime in the middle of the night, she woke to the sound of low voices. She sat up quickly, heart pounding. She hurried to the window, and her fear turned real. 3 shadowy figures were moving near the cattle barn. Cole wasn't in sight. Lena ran to the door, grabbed a lantern, and stepped outside. The cold night air hit her face, and the lantern's flame flickered wildly. She couldn't see Cole anywhere. Then suddenly, the shadows near the barn scattered. Someone shouted. Hooves thudded loudly. Lena froze, unsure what to do. Then she saw Cole appear from the darkness, moving fast and silent as he chased the intruders on foot. They scrambled onto their horses and galloped away, disappearing into the night. Cole slowed his steps as he returned toward her. His breath was steady, though he had clearly run hard. "They tried taking cattle," he said simply. Lena's fear turned into anger. "This has gone too far," Cole nodded. "Yes, and they'll be back. That was only a test." The next morning, Lena rode into town with Cole by her side. She needed to speak with the sheriff. People watched them as they passed, some curious, some whispering, some offering small nods of support after hearing news about the night disturbance inside the sheriff's office. Sheriff Dugan listened carefully as Lena explained what happened. He looked troubled and rubbed his chin. "I believe you," he said slowly, "but I need proof before I can act. The Baron's men know how to cover their tracks." Cole stood silently in the corner, arms crossed. His eyes didn't show frustration, only determination, Sheriff Dugan added. "I'll send a patrol near your ranch, but you two need to stay alert." Lena nodded. Though she knew patrols wouldn't stop determined men like the Baron's riders as they walked out of the sheriff's office. The Baron himself appeared on the other side of the street. He looked furious, and his gaze locked on Lena like a hawk spotting prey. Cole stepped slightly in front of her without making it obvious. The Baron shouted across the street, "This isn't over, Ward!" People stopped to stare. Lena felt heat rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "That depends on you, Mr. Briggs. Leave my land alone." The Baron's face twisted with anger. "You chose a criminal to protect you. Don't be surprised when trouble follows." Cole's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. He simply said, "Leave her be." The Baron sneered. "I don't take orders from the likes of you." Cole didn't reply, but he stepped 1 small inch closer. Enough for the Baron to understand that this wasn't a man who would back down. The Baron turned on his heel and stormed away. Lena exhaled slowly, her hands shaking. She didn't say anything until they were on their horses again. "I don't want you getting hurt because of me," she said softly. Cole looked at her with calm certainty. "I'm not here because of danger. I'm here because you chose me, and I won't let anyone harm you or your land." His words were quiet but strong, like a steady promise. Days passed, and the ranch settled into a careful rhythm again. But the peace was thin, like a rope stretched too tight. One afternoon, as Lena checked the water troughs, she heard the distant sound of cattle bellowing. She ran toward the north field, and her breath caught. Half the herd was missing. The ground showed clear signs of forced movement's hoofprints, heading straight toward the Baron's property. Lena's knees felt weak. They took them. They actually took them. Cole arrived on horseback seconds later, having noticed the disturbance from afar. His expression was serious but not surprised. They did this early, he said. Before sunrise, they planned it. Lena felt tears sting her eyes, not of fear, of frustration. We worked so hard, and they think they can just take whatever they want. Cole scanned the tracks carefully. I can follow the trail, but I won't bring the cattle back alone. Too many men. Too much risk. Lena nodded. We need proof, and we need the town to see it, Cole agreed. They rode straight toward town, dust flying behind them. When they entered the main street, people turned to look. Something in their determined faces caught everyone's attention. They went straight to the sheriff. Sheriff Duggan came outside as soon as he saw them. What happened now? They stole our cattle, Lena said, pointing back toward the road. Half the herd, Cole added. Tracks lead toward the Baron's land. The sheriff's expression hardened. Finally, he couldn't ignore it anymore. I'll get a few men, he said. Let's see where those tracks lead. Small group followed them back to the ranch. When they reached the tracks, the sheriff crouched down, studying them carefully. He followed the prints for nearly a mile, his jaw tightening with every step. The trail went straight across open land, leading to a narrow crossing that pointed directly toward the Baron's property. This is enough, the sheriff said. He's crossed the line. But before they could go any farther, dust appeared on the ridge above them. Riders emerged, Baron's men blocking the path. They wore confident smirks as if daring the sheriff to take another step. One of them called out, "You folks are on the wrong side of the tracks." Cole moved his horse slightly forward, but Lena grabbed his arm. She could feel the tension building, like a rope being pulled too tightly. One wrong move, and everything could fall apart. Sheriff Dugan raised his voice. "Where are Ward's cattle?" The riders laughed. "Must have wandered off." One replied, but their eyes told the truth. They knew exactly what they had done. Cole leaned to Lena and spoke softly. "This won't end here. They'll push harder." Lena felt fear and anger mix in her chest. "What do we do now?" Cole looked at the riders, then at the sheriff, then back at Lena. "We stand our ground," he said calmly. "We protect the ranch, and we make sure the whole town sees the truth." As they returned home, Lena realized that this fight was no longer just about cattle. It was about justice. It was about protecting the home her father had built. And it was about the quiet, determined man riding beside her who had become her last line of safety in a world that seemed ready to take everything away. The pressure was building. The Baron wanted a final confrontation, and Cole knew it was coming. The morning after the stolen cattle incident felt strangely quiet. The ranch usually woke with the sound of animals moving or birds calling from the trees. But that day everything felt still, as if the land itself was waiting for something. Lena stood on the porch, holding a mug of warm tea between her hands, staring across the wide fields. Half the herd was gone, taken by men who were bold enough to do it openly. The sheriff now believed her. But even he had admitted that confronting the Baron directly could lead to something dangerous. Cole stepped up beside her. He had been outside since dawn, checking the fences again and making sure the animals were safe. His face was calm, but she could see the tension behind his eyes. He was a man who understood conflict. He could sense when trouble was close. "They'll come again," he said quietly. "They got away with it once. They'll try something bigger next time." Lena nodded. She already knew it in her heart. What can we do? Cole looked toward the river crossing in the distance, the narrow path that connected their land to the direction of the Baron's ranch. "That's where they'll come through again," he said. "It's the easiest way to move cattle. And if the Baron wants to force a final fight, he'll choose a place where he thinks he has control." Lena set down her mug. "We can't let him take anything else." Cole shook his head. "And we won't, but we need witnesses. If we stand there alone, it's our word against his. If the town sees what happens, the sheriff can finally stop him." Lena took a deep breath. "How do we get people to come?" Cole turned to her with a calm, steady expression. "We don't need the whole town. We just need the right people. The sheriff." And a few men who won't run when trouble starts. Lena understood. The sheriff already believed them. Now he needed proof. Later that morning, Cole saddled his horse and rode to town while Lena stayed behind to watch the ranch. She waited anxiously until he returned around noon, riding faster than usual. As he came closer, she saw the look in his eyes, a mixture of urgency and determination. "The sheriff's coming soon," Cole said as he dismounted. "And he's bringing 2 men he trusts." Lena let out a slow breath. "So it's happening today," Cole nodded. "The Baron's men will move the cattle again. I saw fresh tracks by the ridge when I rode back. They're preparing." Lena felt her stomach twist with nerves, but she also felt something else, a growing courage she hadn't known she possessed. Cole had been a stranger when she chose him in the courtroom, but now she trusted him more than she trusted almost anyone. She wasn't going to stand behind him and let him carry the burden alone. This was her land, her home, her father's legacy. She was ready to face whatever came next. By afternoon, the sheriff arrived with his 2 deputies. They rode with serious expressions and carried no anger, only a quiet sense of responsibility. They greeted Lena respectfully and shook hands with Cole. "We're here to see the truth," Sheriff Duggan said. "We won't interfere unless things get out of hand. But we'll be watching," Cole nodded. "That's all we need." Together they rode toward the river crossing. The path was narrow, surrounded by tall grass on one side and rocky ground on the other. It was easy to see tracks here, and Cole spotted new prints quickly. Cattle prints. Horse prints. Boot marks? The Baron's men had already passed through. Cole's eyes sharpened. "They've taken the rest of the herd," he said. "They're moving them toward the crossing. They're probably planning to drive the cattle straight across before the sheriff can reach them." Lena's heart pounded. "We need to stop them." Cole looked at her with calm reassurance. "We're not stopping them with force. We're stopping them with truth. Once the sheriff sees them stealing cattle, it's over." They positioned themselves slightly ahead of the crossing. Cole told Lena to stay near the sheriff while he rode a little closer to the front. Far enough to watch the trail, but still close enough to join them quickly. The air felt heavy, the sky gray with gathering clouds. It was as if the land was preparing for a storm. Minutes passed. Then the distant sound of hooves broke the silence. Lena's heart jumped. The sheriff and his deputies straightened, watching the trail with sharp eyes. Cole mounted his horse and waited like a statue, ready to move if needed. Then the riders appeared. 5 men, driving a group of stolen cattle toward the crossing. They didn't rush. They didn't hide. They moved confidently, as if no one could stop them. When they reached the narrow path, they slowed on. That was when they saw Cole. One of the men muttered something and pulled his horse back. Another cursed under his breath. The leader, a tall man with a dark vest, stared at Cole with narrowed eyes. "What are you doing here, outlaw?" He spat. Cole didn't move. "Returning what you stole," the rider laughed. "These cattle must have wandered. We're just guiding them." Cole's voice stayed calm. "They wandered straight through your land, past your fence, and into your corral. Unlikely." The riders grew restless. They didn't like being questioned. They especially didn't like that Cole wasn't backing down. One rider suddenly noticed the sheriff behind Lena. His expression changed instantly. "It's a setup," he muttered. "We need to get out of here." But it was too late. The sheriff rode forward. "According to the law, any movement of cattle without permission is theft. And I see stolen cattle in front of me." The lead rider glared at Cole. "You brought the sheriff here on purpose." Cole didn't deny it. "I brought him to see the truth." The Baron's men whispered among themselves, unsure whether to run or bluff. But then one noticed something. The path behind them was narrow. And Cole had positioned himself in a way that kept them from turning the herd around easily. It wasn't a trap, but it was smart positioning. Anger flared in the leader's eyes. "You think you're clever, outlaw, but the Baron won't forgive this." Cole's expression didn't change. "This isn't about forgiveness. It's about right and wrong." The rider tried to push his horse forward, but the sheriff raised a hand. "If you cross that river with those cattle, you'll do it in full view of the law. That means direct theft. That means jail." The riders hesitated. They were caught, and they knew it. Then the sound of more hooves thundered behind them. Everyone turned. The Baron himself arrived on a large horse, his face red with anger. He saw the scene, saw the sheriff, saw the cattle, and he understood instantly. This is nonsense. The Baron roared. They're my cattle. Lena stepped forward, her voice steady and strong. Your brand isn't on them. Mine is. The sheriff nodded toward the herd. She's right. These belong to Miss Ward. The Baron's face twisted in rage. You conspired with a criminal to ruin my name. Cole rode beside Lena, not close enough to crowd her, but close enough to show solidarity. No one ruined anything, he said quietly. You exposed yourself. The sheriff finally spoke with firm authority. Randall Briggs, you're under arrest for ordering cattle theft. The Baron froze. His men looked shocked. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the Baron tried to pull his horse back, but 2 deputies blocked his escape. He seemed ready to argue, ready to fight, ready to deny everything, but the sheriff didn't give him a chance. He placed a hand on the Baron's arm and guided him away. The riders lowered their heads, defeated. The cattle, now calm, grazed near the crossing. The storm clouds above finally cracked open, sending a cool wind across the land. Lena let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Cole looked at her, and their eyes met, both tired, both relieved, both filled with a quiet sense of victory. The sheriff approached them. You two did the right thing bringing us here. The Baron can't push anyone around anymore. He'll face the law now. Lena nodded, feeling an enormous weight lift off her shoulders. Thank you, Sheriff, truly. Cole stayed silent, but the sheriff turned to him. You did good, Marrow. Maybe it's time people stopped calling you an outlaw. Cole didn't smile, but something softened in his eyes. When they returned to the ranch that evening, the land felt different, not heavy with tension anymore, but open, peaceful. The stolen cattle returned to the pasture, their familiar presence making the ranch feel whole again as the sun set behind the hills. Painting the sky with soft colors, Lena stood beside Cole near the corral. She felt the warm breeze brush past, carrying the smell of grass and dust in relief. Cole, she said softly, I made a strange choice that day in the courtroom. Everyone thought I was foolish. Cole looked at her with quiet seriousness. You weren't foolish. Why do you say that? She asked gently. He met her eyes with calm honesty. Because you saw me as something other than my past. And because today proved that we stand stronger together than we ever could alone. Lena felt something warm spread through her chest. She hadn't expected this life. She hadn't expected trust to grow so quickly. But now, she couldn't imagine facing any of it without Cole by her side. He wasn't just a man she chose out of desperation. He had become the man she trusted, the man who protected her land, the man who brought peace where chaos once lived, as the last. Light of day faded, and the stars appeared. Lena turned toward the house. Cole walked beside her, calm and steady, the way he always was. Their story had begun with a judge forcing a strange decision. But it ended with 2 people choosing each other willingly, with respect, courage, quiet strength. The ranch was safe. The Baron was gone, and Lena was no longer alone. She had a partner not just in responsibility, but in the quiet bond that had grown between them day by day, stronger than either of them had expected.